So this week we have a very exciting matchup. We have Packers facing off against the Buccaneers. Right now I have the PFF side up, sort of looking at both teams. We have the Buccaneers defense here and the Packers offense at the bottom. But I want to go through this matchup, talk about some of the biggest questions I have coming into this game, looking at both different teams and everything sort of that is going to, I think lead to the result of what's going to happen here in this game on Sunday. I think it's at 3:25 on some channel, but we'll see the game coming up on Sunday. Should be exciting. We have the Buccaneers coming in at 2-0 after just beating the Saints 20-10. We have the Packers getting their first victory of the season against the Chicago Bears after starting out slowly versus the Minnesota Vikings. And I think if you are the Packers right now, we're coming in here, and I think it's a really good test to see where this team is at, because week one we lose to a Vikings team that I think is very talented. They didn't show up week two, however, versus the Philadelphia Eagles. But now we're facing off against a much better team than the Chicago Bears. The Bears are a team that aren't very talented, and the Packers really needed to win that game, because if they didn't, there would have been some more issues. But the Buccaneers definitely have a much better team, especially right now on the defensive side of the ball. The big news came out earlier this week that Mike Evans was suspended for this game. And when you take this Buccaneers offense that was already missing both Chris Godwin and Julio Jones from injury in week two, there is lots of uncertainty here at wide receiver. We don't know if Godwin or Mike Evans will be playing coming into this game on Sunday. Plus, with Mike Evans officially not playing for sure, after appealing the process to a suspension, they kept it. The Buccaneers may have some issues come Sunday when it comes to their receiver core. They did decide to come in and bring in Cole Beasley. They decided they needed some more help there, so maybe he adds a spark. Who knows what's going to happen there? But both teams, lacking some wide receiver weapons. We know the Packers are much different than last year when it comes to how this team has looked. And after week one, with the Packers only coming in, scoring 7 points, week two was much different after we came in. Matt LaFleur and the Packers offense decided to come in, run the ball consistently, and we run for over 200 yards. Aaron Jones has a monster day. And so I think coming to this game, the Buccaneers have to know that the Packers' plan is to run the ball, because that is their strong suit right now as these rookies continue to develop and get some more playing time. And as the receiver core hopefully improves and gets better, the Packers can rely a lot on this running game, which we saw this past week versus the Bears. I do think when you look at this Buccaneers defense, it's going to be a lot harder this week to run against this defense if you look at the talent they have here. As you can see on the screen, of course, Vita Vea on the inside there, a very talented defensive lineman. We have two great linebackers for the Buccaneers in Levante David as well as Devin White, two guys who can fly around the field. I think they had something like 14 or 15 stops last week, which is basically, not allowing the offense to have a successful play. So they're very talented. They have some very talented corners with Jamal Dean out here. I think he had 2 interceptions last week. They've been playing Antoine Winfield in the slot, actually, as you can see here. He is a safety, but they've played him in the slot 99 times, 26 times at free safety. So they've moved him around a little bit. The majority of snaps have been in the slot. And last week we saw the Saints really shut down Jameis Winston. He threw 3 interceptions in that game. I do think, of course, Rodgers is probably going to protect the ball better than Jameis Winston did versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but there are some very talented players on this team. And so I think the biggest question first comes down to, are the Packers and this offensive line going to be able to protect Aaron Rodgers? So in week 2, when we look at the Buccaneers, let me find it. I have it here somewhere saved. Okay, so here are all the Buccaneers defenders and how many pressures they had. So as you can see, they had 20 pressures. They sacked Jameis Winston a total of 7 times. And so this is a very talented pass rush with Shaq Barrett leading the charge with 6 pressures last week, 2 hits. Joe Tyron Shoyinka with 3 pressures, Devin White with 3 pressures, Vita Vea with 3 pressures, Levante David with 2 pressures. So we know the Buccaneers like to bring blitz packages, and we'll see probably some of that come Sunday. And so this Packers offensive line has, I'd say, held up pretty nicely. It has been nice to get Elgton Jenkins back in this past game, to have him come out there in his first game after, of course, suffering his ACL injury last year. I do think we saw a lot of improvement coming into week 2 for this Packers offensive line. Partly, I think the fact that we kicked Royce Newman to right guard, Elgton Jenkins to right tackle. Jake Hansen in week 1 really struggled at right guard. I think he allowed 4 pressures overall. And so I think that putting Royce Newman at right guard allowed us to stay a little nicer there at the right guard position. And then Elton Jenkins, he allowed a few pressures, but I think to have him there is clearly a positive. And hopefully this next week and coming in the future weeks, as he gets used to playing football once again, this offensive line will hopefully get better. And hopefully eventually we'll see if maybe David Bakhtiari can potentially return. But Yosh Nijman has been holding it up nicely on the left side. But these are lots of talented pass rushers here. The Packers will definitely have a much harder test this next week facing off against a very talented Buccaneers pass rush. So one question I have is, if the Buccaneers probably know the Packers want to be able to run the ball as they did last week, their plan has to be to try their best to stop the run. And the question is, if they are successful, if the Packers come into this game, they start running the ball, they try to stick to the run, and they're not getting anywhere because the Buccaneers plan to shut that down. If that happens, are the Packers going to be able to get the ball moving in the passing game? Because there are lots of uncertainties here for the Packers at receiver. We know that now the Packers are much different when it comes to targeting wide receivers. Last year, most of the targets went to Devontae Adams. And now, as we've seen from the first two games, these targets are getting spread out all over the receiver core. We saw Sammy Watkins have a few targets last game. Randall Cobb, Alan Lazard, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs. We did see Sammy Watkins have a nice 55-yard catch, so hopefully he's building that chemistry with Rodgers. But the Packers are going to need to be able to rely on multiple players, multiple receivers here as the games start to come on and teams start to try to shut down the run. We'll see if they're able to, because I do think this is a very talented backfield. Just because you want to stop the run doesn't mean you're going to be able to. So we'll see if they can keep it up. But if they do stop the run, will the Packers be able to take advantage of this very talented Buccaneers defense? So even though Jamal Dean had 2 picks last game, and Jameis Winston threw 3 picks overall, this is a very talented secondary, but there has been one weak link, at least last week, and that was Carlton Davis. So let me show you here, if I can find this thing I had saved. So here's PFF, and this is Carlton Davis and how he played this past week. So he was targeted this past game 14 times by Jameis Winston. He allowed 10 receptions for 142 yards and 1 touchdown. 3 receptions to Michael Thomas, 3 to Juwan Johnson, 2 to Chris Olave for 62 yards. So Carlton Davis was targeted a lot last game by Jameis Winston, and Jameis Winston was pretty successful overall when it came to targeting Carlton Davis. So we'll see who is going to be matching up with Carlton Davis on this Packers offense. Maybe they'll flip guys around to have guys guard different players, but Jamal Dean has been locking people up. Winfield has been locking people up, but Carlton Davis has been the weak link, and we'll see if maybe Aaron Rodgers can focus on him and if he's able to pick him apart potentially, considering just how poorly he played last week. So we'll see there, but this Buccaneers team, this Buccaneers defense is very talented, and they showed that last week and in week 1 against the Cowboys, holding the Cowboys to 3 points week 1, the Saints to 10 points week 2, but I still think this Packers offense will be able to move the ball. It's going to be harder this week, but hopefully we can rely on the run and get things going that way and sort of see what this passing offense can do. So now moving to the other side of the ball, let me flip this here. Let's change this to the offense, and we'll switch it to the Packers defense. Okay, so I think I have that in here, and this is the Packers, this is base defense. Let's put it into nickel, because it's probably be majority of the time. So we have Douglas coming in at nickel, and then 4 guys here on the defensive line. So when we look at the Buccaneers, clearly Tom Brady is a baller. He's always been a baller. And the question is, of course, as I already talked about when the video started, is which receivers are going to be healthy and able to play coming in Sunday for the Buccaneers. They have Julio Jones slated here. We don't know if he's going to be able to play at this point. If not, they have Russell Gage, and they also have Rashad Perryman. And I saw a stat that the second that it came out that Mike Evans was suspended, that the total point total for this game went from 48 points to 41 points. So clearly, losing Mike Evans is going to greatly affect this this Buccaneers team, which I think gives this Packers defense a much better chance to hopefully shut down Tom Brady. Because so far this year, Tom Brady honestly hasn't done too much when it came to the passing game, and that's with Mike Evans on the field. So let's take a look at his stats in his first 2 weeks. So week 1 versus the Cowboys, 212 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 87 rating. Last week versus the Saints, only a 52.9% completion percentage, 190 yards and 1 touchdown, and 0 interceptions, a 79.3 rating. So far this year, only 402 yards, 2 touchdowns to only 1 interception. So this Buccaneers offense hasn't really been that successful moving the ball. And I think when we look at this Packers secondary, week 1, we get torched by the Vikings. Justin Jefferson came in, destroyed us. Week 2, we held up much better. I do think that partly has to do with the fact that we were facing Justin Fields. He only threw for like 70 yards. The Packers secondary responded well. But I do think the biggest question mark for this Packers defense coming in this week is, are we going to be able to stop the run? Because it really seems like Joe Barry likes to, sit in zone, allow teams to run the ball, but sort of limit the, deep passes in the passing game. And he's fine if you just sort of slowly run the ball. But if we take a look last week, the Bears were very unsuccessful, as we talked about, when it came to passing the ball. Only 70 yards, 7 for 11, only throwing the ball 11 times for Justin Fields. But they were very successful when it came to running the ball. As you can see here, for the team, 27 total carries, 180 total yards, and 6.7 yards per carry. And there was that one drive in the fourth quarter. The Bears barely passed. They almost ran the ball every single play, and they moved pretty much the entire extent of the field. Luckily, the Packers defense was able to come in clutch. We stopped Justin Fields when he tried to run for a touchdown. Quay Walker, with his speed, stopped him. And then we have that nice goal line stand, and that game would have been a lot closer if we would have allowed them to score there. So luckily, we did stop them at the goal line, but they were able to just run the ball the entire time on that drive. And we'll see if... And so I think the question is, can this Packers run defense show up? Because so far this year, if we take a look at our total statistics, right now the Packers have the 27th most rushing yards per game allowed through 2 weeks, 153 per game. And we are allowing a league-ranked 29th, allowing 5.6 yards per carry. So the Packers' run defense has not been good this year, and we are facing off against a very talented running back in Leonard Fournette. So I would not be surprised with the Buccaneers, without lots of their top receiver talents, trying to get the running game going with Leonard Fournette. We did see last week the Saints were able to keep him mostly in check. He had a total of 24 carries, only averaged 2.7 yards per carry, but the Packers have shown that so far this season they have not been able to stop the run, and so the question is, can they? And I think we're going to see this week with the Buccaneers, without their top receiver talent, with them most likely needing to rely on the run, can the Packers stop the run? So we'll see if Joe Barry is able to dial up a plan to stop Leonard Fournette. And I would have thought so far, with the addition of Quay Walker, having Quay Walker in there, and Devondre Campbell, and the additions on the defensive line, that we would have been able to be a little bit more successful against stopping the run, but so far that has not been the case. Hopefully we can see something different this week, and we'll see sort of what the Packers come in here and plan to do coming on Sunday. And then to end off this video, I want to talk about the Packers pass rush coming in here against a Bucs team, our Bucs offensive line that has been pretty successful. Week 2 against the Saints, they only allowed 6 pressures and no sacks. The thing is, I do think when you have talented pass rushers like a Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary, regardless if you've been successful in the past, these guys are going to get pressures, they're going to get sacks. They've showed it so far this year that they have the ability to. And if we take a look at the first 2 weeks for the Packers, they had 20 pressures week 1, which is a lot of pressures, 2 sacks week 1. And then in week 2 against Justin Fields, 15 pressures and 3 sacks. So I still think the Packers are going to be able to get pressure on Tom Brady. Then you add the fact without his receivers there, may take a little longer to find open receivers come Sunday. And I think the Packers are going to be able to get some pressure onto Tom Brady. So overall, this should be a very exciting matchup. 2 great quarterbacks, all-time Hall of Famer quarterbacks in Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. The Packers heading to Florida to face off against Brady. And I think the Packers are going to be able to come away with a win, even though I think it's going to be a very, very close game because of I think these teams are very evenly matched right now, and I think we will really to see what the Packers are made of against a much more talented team than we saw in the Bears last week. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, as always. Feel free to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more Packers content. But that is all for today, and I'll see you guys next time.